a good question. There's you could say that almost everything that Gilbert does competes with the private sector. Meaning, you could say that building roads or maintaining roads competes with the private sector. But because you could have a private company that comes out and paves the road for you, and Gilbert does outsource some of that. When I think of things that really compete with the private sector, I think of our rec center. That's one that there's obviously just within a mile or two. There's competing, whether it's gyms, whether it's any sort of athletics, swimming, running, etc. And so that is one that competes with it. Our garbage collection competes with it. There are private companies out there that do it. Like I said in my first campaign, and I'll say in the re-election campaign, I'm open to looking at any of the things that we feel compete with the private sector and deciding if we want to keep going forward with that. I won't say that I think that there should be zero competition no matter what, because I think there's some gray area as to what competition is. When we look at the rec center, for example, that's been a hot topic over the last few years and prior to me being on the council. And there's some valid concerns there that it does compete with the private sector. And I would be willing to talk more about that and see if it makes sense to go elsewhere. It's always a little bit disconcerting to me when government agencies or government groups have not unlimited funding, but they have options that don't always exist to the private company. I own a part owner in a small business. I know what it's like to make payroll, to make ends meet. And the town of Gilbert has done a tremendous job with their finances. With that being said, it's not fair to private companies who don't have the same abilities as government does to fund their organizations. And so I'm open to talk about the different things that do exist out there that people feel like compete with private business. And we obviously do have some of those, and it makes sense to look at them a little more and decide if that's something that, as a town, as residents, we don't want to run as a government agency anymore, or as a government funded group, and let the private sector do it themselves.